The urgent search operation continues for the second American on board a fighter jet that went down in Iran. U.S. officials say a crew member was rescued earlier today. This is the first U.S. warplane that has gone down in hostile territory since the war began 5 weeks ago. I want to bring into the conversation retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath. She was the first woman to fly a combat mission for the Marines and flew over 2,000 flight hours on over 85 combat missions during her career. She's a candidate for the open Senate seat in Kentucky, and General Manner is still with us. Amy, let me begin with your background here as a former fighter pilot. Just talk us through the kind of training these crew members had to go through and prepare for, and what's at stake for them in this moment.
So I flew a very similar aircraft to the F-15 that was shot down on lots of combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan and over hostile territory. And every single flight, we go over procedures of what happens if we are shot down or have to eject and over hostile territory. And I can tell you that we all know that the search and rescue units that are sent if we are shot down, those search and rescue units are the best. We know they are. We train with them. The first thing that people have to understand is the ejection itself from an aircraft that has been shot down is a very violent thing to undergo. And, you may not even survive an ejection. If you do, you might be injured. Once you're down on the ground, the first thing you're thinking about is evading and making sure that you stay away from anybody that might capture you. And then you're trying to get a hold of those combat search and rescue crews. And we have some communication equipment to be able to do that. We're trained on that. And again, we're briefed on these procedures, and we brief ourselves as aircrew every single mission. So highly trained here.
Amy, can I ask you about that ejection mechanism for a moment? Because if there were two service members on the plane, I was asking Mark about this earlier, how unlikely is it that they are not together and that during the ejection process they were separated and one was rescued and the other still status unknown?
Well, Eamon, when you have an ejection out of a plane like the F-15, both aircrew are going to be ejected very quickly, one right after the other. We're talking like within a second. So they're going to be in the same area. It's highly unlikely that one would not be ejected unless there was some malfunction there. And we just don't know that right now. This is ongoing, but they're probably in the same general area. It's not likely that one stayed in the aircraft and the other, was ejected out of the aircraft, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so to that point, General, you were talking about this a little bit in terms of the tools that are available for the military to conduct this search and rescue operation. What are the nature of the forces that are involved in this? You referenced your son earlier, but I suspect at some point there would be troops on the ground, American boots on the ground, going over this terrain, going over this territory, and perhaps even trying to secure the location from oncoming Iranian troops who may be also looking through that area.
Absolutely. And by the way, I want to definitely a shout out to Amy for her past service and continued service to our country. That's quite an honor to have her here. It will take hundreds of people in multiple aircraft to be able to retrieve that pilot. They are not likely to put boots on the ground in terms of the Air Force parajumpers unless they notice remains or a parachute or they receive the signal itself. So you're not going to just put troops on the ground to do searching. You're going to use thermal methods. You're going to use electronic means to be able to determine where they are. You have the capability with those HC-130s and the Blackhawks. These are highly skilled people to be able to go in and to be able to find either, again, the aircraft or parts of the aircraft, or to pick up any special signals and to help secure and safeguard the pilot once.
The situation surrounding the downed fighter jet and the missing American service member is no longer just a military story. It's becoming a reflection of how modern wars are fought, managed, and in some cases, misunderstood. When someone like Amy McGrath explains the realities of ejection and survival, it cuts through the abstraction of war and reminds us how quickly things turn from controlled operations into raw survival. There's a tendency to assume that advanced training and superior technology create certainty, but moments like this expose the opposite. Even with elite preparation, once a pilot ejects over hostile territory like Iran, control disappears. What follows is isolation, injury risk, and a race against time where the smallest delay can change everything. The idea that both crew members likely landed in the same area only intensifies the mystery and the urgency. What's more revealing, though, is how this crisis is unfolding alongside conflicting narratives from leadership. Claims of weakened enemy defenses don't align with the reality of a downed aircraft. That gap isn't just Rajnitik, it's dangerous. Because when public messaging doesn't match battlefield conditions, it raises doubts about whether decisions are being made based on accurate assessments or optimistic assumptions. The criticism aimed at Donald Trump highlights a deeper issue: focus. In moments where lives are actively at risk, leadership communication isn't just symbolic, it sets the tone for priorities. When messaging appears disconnected from the urgency of the situation, it creates the impression that strategy is either unclear or constantly shifting. And in war, inconsistency can be just as risky as miscalculation. There's also the broader concern about rules and restraint. The discussion around targeting infrastructure and dismissing established norms of warfare introduces a troubling dimension. These aren't just legal debates. They directly impact how adversaries respond and how much danger soldiers face on the ground. When boundaries blur, retaliation becomes less predictable and more severe. Ultimately, this moment underscores a critical truth. Military strength alone doesn't guarantee control over outcomes. Strategy, clarity, and discipline matter just as much, if not more. Right now, the US appears to have the capability to act, but the bigger question is whether it has a coherent plan guiding those actions. Because at the center of all this analysis is still one missing individual. And until that person is found, every decision, every message, and every delay carries weight far beyond politics. It carries consequences measured in human lives.